Welcome to episode 172 of Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we continue with part 2 of Orpheus and Eurydice. Persephone turned to Hades, her face streaming with silver tears, and Hades turned to his wife. One oily black tear trickled down his cheek and splashed onto his beard. He drew breath and spoke, "Fetch me the three fates." The three ancient sisters were brought before him, the first who spins out the thread of life, the second who measures its length, and the third who cuts it. Hades looked into the wrinkled, leathery face of the third sister. "Find the cut thread of Eurydice's life and mend it." The third sister bowed before the god. Hades turned to Orpheus. "Now go. Leave my palace, leave my realm, and she will follow you. But do not look behind you. Do not look over your shoulder until the light of the sun shines full on your face, or you will never see her face again." Orpheus bowed. He turned on his heel and left the palace. He made his way across the shadowy kingdom until he came to the river's edge. Chiron, the ferryman, was waiting for him. He climbed into the boat. As he sat down, he felt it tremble, as if someone had climbed in behind him. He kept his eyes fixed on the far shore. When they reached the riverbank, he stepped out of the boat, and behind him he could hear footsteps, soft footsteps following him. As he journeyed, he could sometimes hear the snap of a twig. Sometimes he thought he could feel Eurydice's breath on the back of his neck, and still he looked ahead. He made his way through the tunnel of stone, and then, at last, he was out of the cave, breathing the fresh air of the living world. Above him, the sky was bright with shining stars. Soon, he thought to himself, soon the dawn will break and the light of the sun will shine on my face. But as Eurydice was following Orpheus, she caught her foot on a stone. She tripped and she fell. Orpheus heard her stumble, and without thinking, he turned to catch her in his arms. He tried to break her fall, and for a single moment, he saw her face, pale beneath the silver stars. And then his arms closed around empty air, and she was gone. In the land of many guests, the third fate cut the thread of Eurydice's life for a second time. And this time there would be no mending it. Orpheus turned. He ran back into the cave, down into the darkness, until he came to the edge of the oily black water. He shouted her name, and there was no answer. The power of his music failed him at last. Cerberus came growling and snarling and snapping at his heels. Chiron, the ancient ferryman, turned a deaf ear to all of his pleas, and all the gods agreed that a living mortal could not enter the world of the dead again. Orpheus knew that there would be no return to the land of the dead. For 7 days and 7 nights, Orpheus remained at the entryway, unable to sing or even speak, taking no food or drink, wishing for death. But even death refused him. Finally, he had no choice but to get up and go back into the world. So he went forlornly back to earth and lived in a forest cave far from the companionship of men. Once there, he avoided every scene of joy and turned his back on women, although there were many maidens who would have liked to make him forget Eurydice. At first, there was only his lyre to share his solitude, but soon the forest creatures came to live beside him, and often sat listening to his music, looking exceedingly wise and sorrowful. Even in his sleepless hours, when he fancied he heard Eurydice calling, he was never quite alone, for the bat and owl and the things that love the darkness flitted about him, and he saw the glowworms creep toward him out of the night-cold grass. One day, a party of Bacchantes found him seated outside the cave, playing the mournful music that told of his lost love. They bade him change the sad notes to something gay so that they might dance. But Orpheus was too wrapped up in his sorrow to play any strain of cheerful music, and he refused to do as they asked. The Bacchantes were half maddened by their festival days of drinking, and this refusal so enraged them that they fell upon the luckless musician and tore him to pieces. Then they threw his mangled body into the river, and as the head of Orpheus drifted down the stream, his lips murmured again and again, "Eurydice," until the hills echoed the beloved name, and the rocks and trees and rivers repeated it in mournful chorus. His shade passed a second time to Tartarus, where he sought out his Eurydice and embraced her with eager arms. They roam the happy fields together now, and Orpheus gazes as much as he will upon her. The Muses gathered up his remains to give them an honorable burial at the foothill of Mount Olympus, and his lyre was placed by Zeus among the stars. And it is said that even today that the nightingale sings more sweetly there than in any other spot in Greece. And here is where my tale ends for today. But I'll be back with more tales, many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.